Welcome back to Broke Dick Drag Racer Bought a House Can't Afford to Go Racing Anymore channel. Just kidding. Doing some maintenance on the bike after my ride the other night. Kind of parked the bike and went inside, and I didn't really look at anything else. So we'll do a little rundown of what I'm going to do. Kind of want to go through the clutch. I'm going to do plugs. Maybe I'll change the oil. I'm going to kind of look at it. I haven't noticed any milking or nothing going on with the methanol. Probably because I let it get hot enough to actually not have that problem. And what else? I'll do a compression test on it quick. So take along, check it out. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to do a compression test. I already had the bike kind of apart, and I decided, what the heck, I'll do a little video on this. So I got the plugs out already. Batteries are in, bike is on. You can see I got 15 volts, no fuel, no oil, whatever. Engine coolant temp, again, I don't run coolant, so that's just basically engine temperature is 78 degrees. So the motor's not even warmed up. This is just a straight up cold compression test. So I'll run through all 4 cylinders quick. I'm gonna kind of show you how this thing goes. Almost 240. It was like 238 on number 1. This is kind of the first like real maintenance I've done to this thing since the end of the season last year. So I'm still kind of moving slow, just kind of getting things ready for the year. Okay, number 2. 240 again. Finally got a break from the heat, and I think I might actually get down to the track pretty quick here. Okay, number 3. Oh, 240 again. It's a good sign that 3 out of 4 are the same so far. You guys probably remember the Fuel Tech has a built-in compression tester that kind of does a quick like engine analysis based on cranking voltage. But I still like to do the old gauge and actually put a number on it. That Fuel Tech setup would tell me basically if I had like a bad cylinder or something that was obvious, and then I could dig into it a little farther and start diagnosing stuff from there. But I like actually having an actual gauge, especially since it doesn't take long to do any of this, so I can actually get a good read on the engine health. I'll do a leak down on this later too. Just a touch over 240. So got all 4 cylinders pretty much dead on, which is a good sign. And then we'll check these spark plugs. I'll show you what they look like. After basically, those were fresh when I started the methanol deal. So you'll see kind of what those look like now after a bunch of idle time and start time and tune time. And then my little road trip that I took. So I'll take a peek at the spark plugs now. So here's the spark plugs, 1 through 4, left to right. Pretty dirty for idle time and stuff, but actually good enough that I'm going to put them back in. I'll probably make the first 100 foot, 330, maybe even 1/8 mile hit on these, and double check the tune. And then when I start getting it stretched out to 1,000 foot, quarter mile runs, I'll put fresh plugs in for that. But yeah, not terrible. Actually ran pretty good when I was cruising it around, so good enough to stick her back in for a little bit. And some people have asked what I run for coils. There's a reason I run those. So pretty cheap little upgrade. So what I'm going to do now is a leak down test. And what that does basically is you bring, we'll start with the number 1 cylinder. I'll bring that cylinder up on the compression stroke, and I know the valves are closed. And then you basically take air compressor air. That's this gauge here, this first gauge, as your incoming air pressure. And you're going to apply pressure to that cylinder. And this will be the gauge that's going to tell you how much air is leaking out of the cylinder. So in a perfect world, these gauges will read identical. If you're adding, say, because we're going to look for a percentage loss, basically, we'll do 100 PSI, because then the math is easy. So if I put 100 PSI into the cylinder, so I have regulated air, 100 pounds going in, and the cylinder is only holding, say, 80 psi, that means I got 20% leakage in that cylinder. So this is where, the compression test I just did is a real good quick health check. Now this will find if you got bad valve seats, bad rings, head gasket or something going bad. So now this will actually narrow down your problem if you've got, a goofy running motor or something, down on power. Compression test might not find, say, a nicked valve seat or something like that, because the compression stroke, it comes, especially if you got a bike that cranks real fast, that stroke comes around so fast that it'll still maybe make good compression, but you do have a problem with, leakage. And with heat and temperature, sometimes those can get worse. So what I'm gonna do now is take my air compressor hose here, hook that up, crank this up to 100, and we're gonna watch the other gauge to see if there's any leak down. And I'll have to turn the pressure up with the regulator here, so we'll do each cylinder. So that's a good sign already that we got 35 pounds in, on both gauges. So I'll turn this up to 100. $90. There. We got 100 psi up here, incoming air pressure. That cylinder is holding 100 psi. That's good. That's what we want to see. Even a couple percentage drop would be acceptable, but that's good. So now if I find in the next 3 cylinders, if I find something bad, you guys are going to find it with me. So now we'll crank this back down. It'll start bleeding pressure off. Disconnect our shop air. Disconnect our cylinder. And all this is the same adapter hose I used off the compression tester. We'll go over one cylinder. So number 2. If you notice, I got the bike is still powered up right now, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my thumb and I'm going to feel for a compression stroke now. So I'll just crank the bike over until my thumb pops off. Right there. So I'll do it again. Turn this up. Bingo. 100 and 100. That's 2 cylinders, so good so far. On to the third. Just turning the pressure down like that before I release everything just makes everything easier on the regulator. Just doesn't beat stuff up as bad. These pistons and rings, and basically the whole rotating assembly, have been together for almost 3 years. Oops, wrong hose. I forgot to check for compression. Right there. Get our pressure back up. $100 and $100. 3 for 3. I'll save my smart remarks about nitrous motors and turbo motors until after I check the 4th cylinder. It'll be my luck. This one will be a dead dud. And these tools are not expensive. You should probably, if you're doing any kind of racing a motorcycle, you should probably have an understanding of how to maintain the motor at some level. So I suggest you get these tools and you use them frequently, because it'll save you a ton of money in the long run, because you will find a problem before you find it at the track during a pass, and that's when it gets expensive. It's a lot cheaper to find it sitting on the bench or in the stand than it is going down track. Don't want to overextend the gauge there. There. 100 pounds, 100 pounds. Gotta love a turbo motor. This is a nitrous motor. That would have been 4 bad cylinders in a row every time I tested it, because that's the normal for nitrous motors. Just kidding, nitrous guys. I've just been really happy since I went with turbo. It's been a whole lot cheaper and easier on the wallet, and the bike's faster than it's ever been. So we'll just keep going with that. Go ahead and put our stuff away and put plugs back in. One thing I forgot to do was, after I got back from that street ride in the last video, is I never pulled the cap off the fuel cell to see how much fuel I had used, because it's going to be kind of a gauge I'm going to use for if I decide to do any street riding, or just, you know, how much I can get out of a pass or down the return road, or just mileage in general. I think we're pretty good. You can just see it, see the line wiggling around there. That's about it's about 2 inches down from the top. So I used, you know, not quite 2 inches of fuel, because it wasn't all the way flush to the top, but I got 8 inches to burn, so I think we'll be good on fuel. I mean, I'll at least get to make, like, you know, 2 passes, or I could probably even go for a 20-mile ride. We'll see. So what we're gonna do is honestly my favorite part of doing any kind of like race maintenance. I haven't had this apart since the last pass I made last season. Basically the season ended. I parked the bike. The weather got cold and crappy. I don't think I did much of anything other than get the fuel out of it and park it. And then the whole, you know, house buying thing came to be. I never had a chance to really go through this thing and you know, see basically how that last pass went. So, you know, we'll tell the whole story now. So I'll get this apart, and then I'll start measuring stuff. And I remember basically what my like base tune-up is from, you know, last year and, you know, years prior that I've been running this clutch now. So I'll get this apart, start measuring. I'll look at all my fibers and steels, replace what I need to replace, and then I'm going to make one change to get ready for the year, because it was doing one thing last year that I want to kind of try to improve on, and we'll see if it has an effect.
That many of you have been at work all
So I just wanted to show something real quick, because I don't have a reason to, like, you know, hide crap on this channel or whatever. You probably saw when I pulled the cover off, you saw that milky looking crap in the cover there. That's not from the methanol. That's not milking from the fuel. That's condensation, and that's what happens when you get temperature changes. Like, my garage was really, really hot today, and it's really, really cool outside right now. And you can even see on my clutch here, there's moisture on the aluminum. As the temperature is changing, the stuff starts to sweat. That's from, you can even see it on the inside of the cover. There's moisture on the aluminum and the metal parts as the temperature changes. For those of you that don't know, like, you live in the northern states where you get winter, this is the exact reason why you shouldn't fire your bike up in the middle of winter if it's not in climate controlled storage. And, well, not don't fire it up completely, but don't fire it up if you can't let it get hot enough to burn that moisture out. That moisture kind of just like sits in the oil. If you look in here, the oil itself is still clean. That moisture just kind of collects, and if you don't let the motor get hot enough to burn that stuff out, you're basically just gonna like run it through the bearings and everything else. It's not great. It's not the end of the world. It's not great, but this is why you shouldn't run a motor in winter unless you're gonna let it get hot enough to completely burn that stuff out. A lot of people think in the middle of winter they want to go out and fire the bike up and just make sure it still starts, the battery is still good, or run some fuel through it. If you're not burning the moisture out of the oil, you're just running moisture through the oil. So basically what I'm going to do is clean that up and get the clutch done back together, and I'm going to fire this bike up, and it will get hot enough to burn that moisture out. But I'll get back to taking the clutch apart, but I just thought I'd show you guys that because I wanted you to see what that's from. Like, it doesn't even smell like fuel. Can you smell it? Take a whiff. Smell it. Get close. Smell it. Doesn't even smell like fuel. It's just water. But yeah, so I'll get back to taking this apart. Just thought I would show you what we kind of deal with when we get these radical temperature changes up here. So we'll get back to doing some clutch work. Now what I'm going to do is go through and I'm going to measure my stack height, which is basically just the thickness of the entire clutch pack. And I got notes on my motor right there. That first number there, 1.530, that's the stack height I shoot for to start with. 465 is just the measurement I get off the outside of the hat. So that's just like my reference number. If I see this number get big, that means the stack is getting smaller. So this is what I start with for reference. That's what I monitor throughout the day. And once that number gets to about 475-ish, so about 10 thou, is the clutch is going to act completely different. So when I see that start going down is when I'll start making changes. And from my experience so far is if I'm running enough spring and it's not driving through the clutch, or not enough spring, enough weight, and it's not driving through the clutch on the big end, I tend to wear a little less clutch. But I've gone anywhere from 3 to say 6 passes before I get 10 thou knocked off. And that totally depends on the clutch tune-up itself. So if the clutch is set soft, clutch is going to slip a little, you wear a little bit more faster. If you're on a good track and you can run a bunch of weight, and you got the clutch really locked up and digging, you don't wear as much off as fast. Again, I'm not making mega big power like the Pro Street guys, but it makes decent power. But my numbers really aren't going to correlate to what anybody else is doing. That's the honest truth of it. Is this is all my reference stuff, so my setup isn't really going to be the same or really matter to what somebody else is doing, because unless they're running exactly that setup with exactly all of this setup and the same power setup and the same weight and the same tire and shock and wheelbase, everything else, none of these numbers are going to really matter to somebody. They can be kind of a guideline if somebody says, well, hey, Chris's bike does this, so maybe mine's not so far out of whack if I wear, I get 6 passes and I wear 10 thou. Yeah, that's pretty normal. So again, everything's reference. I'm not an expert. This is my learning. This is what I've figured out. Bear with me. Hate on me if you want. It's what I do. So now I'm going to go get to some measuring. What I should have explained too is that that 1-inch 530 number that is right here, from MTC, they give you guidelines of what to start with. This thing should be close to what they recommend is like a 1.5 stack height. I run a little thicker than, or a little thicker than normal, I guess normal stack height, because sometimes you get into an event and I might not be able to, between rounds, do any kind of clutch maintenance. And at the thicker stack height, the clutch is more consistent than when it starts to get down to the thinner stack height. So even though 1.5 is probably would work, if I start losing, numerically, I start losing thickness off of that setting, the clutch is going to drastically start acting different and might not make a full pass out of it, or it might just slip or something stupid. So I'm running mine, and this is just basically because of how I race the bike. I start out thicker. Then by the time it starts to wear down, it's in basically that optimum like operating range. So if I need to make 3 or 4, hot lap passes basically, and I can't get into the clutch, I know that it probably shouldn't have worn enough off to drastically change how the clutch is going to act. So again, everything is about compromise with these clutches. If you can't do the exact maintenance after every pass, you have to find a way to figure your program out to sort of learn what's going to work for you. What can you get away with? What's ideal, and what is going to be okay. Ideal and okay are not the same, but you can get by if you have to. And this is just what I've learned. It's been 2 years running, or almost 3 years now running this clutch, and just kind of what I figured out. I've only had one major mishap with it where it totally ate one, and that was a mistake I made, and I was in a hurry, and it was between rounds. So this is just what I've learned and what's been working. This year, schedule's a little bit slower for me. I'm basically be doing nothing but test and tune. I might dial in them numbers a little better, and I might, maybe I'll dial it in exactly that after every pass, or not. We'll see. Sometimes I'm lazy, but we'll see what we got for a measurement here. I'll measure this in a few different spots. 1 inch 5/17. 1 inch 5/15. That slipped a little bit. Yeah, 1 inch 5/15. So I'm about 12, we'll say 12, 13 thou, 15 thou under what my target is. That's not horrible. If I was at the track, I'd let this go, I'd put it back in and leave it, and we'll finish the day. What I'm going to do is, because I'm starting fresh, haven't run yet this year, is I'm going to go through it. I'm going to find, my steels are all pretty good. You go through steels very minimally, unless you really got one that's, warped. Coloring doesn't mean shit. You could have a completely black steel, it can still be good. It's when they're black and they're warped that'll give you a problem. This one's pretty discolored, but it's also pretty thick. So some of my thicker ones, it'll take a lot of heat before it warps. So I'll check it for flatness, but for the most part, it's pretty much just hunt down the fibers and look for steels that have obvious signs of warpage going on. But yeah, first we'll start with going through, we'll just sort them out. Let me get that out of my hand. So we'll get all our fibers out of the pack. Everybody's got their different ways they go through clutches. Mine's nothing special. I just try to be quick. Looks like I'm not running any specific thicker or thinner ones. So we'll just go through quick and we'll look for one that's just maybe, a couple thou under the rest. But like with these fibers, what I've noticed, 105 thou roughly is about normal. 110 is a pretty thick one. 100 thou is one that's on its way out. So if they're around 105, we'll leave them. That one's 103, so that's a thin one to start with. This one already looks questionable. Well, 110. We'll leave it. 100, there's the thinnest one so far. Slide that over. 103. So we're looking for anything thinner than 100 now. 104. 104. 105. 110. So this one is actually measuring, well, a couple different spots here. I got anywhere from 98 to 100 thou. So what I'm going to do is go find out of the trailer supply, I'm going to go try to find one that's about 110. So I'll look for one fresh, thick one to put in, and that'll get me back in the ballpark of where I want to be. So I'll go run and grab that quick. Okay, so ran out to the trailer, got another fiber. I keep all the fibers in the trailer in Ziploc bags, not soaking in oil, but damp, definitely, definitely damp with oil, so that I'm not putting them in dry. So I'm going to go through and kind of rearrange my stack right here, and then we'll remeasure everything. And if you do have any steels that are thicker than the rest, my normal steel thickness is about 90 thou. Sometimes I got a couple thick ones that are about 100, 110, you know, depending on how I'm moving stack height around. What I've noticed is you want to run the thickest ones you got in the center of the clutch pack where they get the most heat. So that kind of helps, you know, disperse some of that heat and keep from, you know, if you put a thin one in the middle and it gets that hot, it might warp and then bam, you got, you know, goofy acting clutch. So what we'll do is start with, you know, I'll just kind of put it in my hand, kind of how it was going to go in the motor. So start with the fiber, steel, fiber, steel. Kind of get how that goes. Okay, probably looked like I put those in kind of a weird order, but I kept the thick ones in the middle. So now we'll see how close we are to my target. If you can see that without twisting my shit all around. Come on. Trying to do this awkwardly and backwards for the camera. The number I wanted to shoot for. That's kind of hard to focus on, and I'm holding it real weird. 1 inch 530 right on the number. Measure a few more spots. 29, 30, 30, 30. We're good. So I'm going to throw this all back together now. I don't see any excess of clutch material in here either, which is a good sign, which means it wasn't eating anything up. Okay. And if you have, you know, maybe I've said this in another video, maybe people already know this. These steels, they're stamped out of material, so they have a rounded edge and a sharp edge from where the stamping occurs. This rounded edge, you kind of want to always put that facing in, so when the clutch is disengaged, comes out, you know, you're getting ready to launch, that rounded edge will help kind of glide, whatever, over any imperfections in the clutch hub. So it should engage smooth. Disengagement, you're not worried about as much. So you want to make sure you have smooth engagement. So it's just another little trick, run the rounded side in. I'm probably just repeating a bunch of garbage a lot of people know already, but you never know. So I went ahead and made my change that I wanted to make from last year, involving the dynamic springs. So you can guess what I changed. I'm not going to say nothing in case it doesn't work and I don't look like an idiot. But I usually look like an idiot all the time anyways. It's nothing new. But that was the change I wanted to make, was just a static spring change. We're going to hopefully tighten the clutch up a little bit. Good. Everything checks out good. Time to run it. So I'm going to let that thing warm up for a while and just idle and build some heat. Not worried about following out spark plugs or nothing. It's old plugs in her anyways. So yeah, just let it bake